we're going to do a little testing script. We're going to right-click on Scripts and choose Create, C# script. I'm going to call this Testing, which would be a capital T, Testing. And then open that script in your Visual Studio. Now there's a lot of things going on here. These things at the top, I call them libraries. There's a specific name for them, but basically we have a whole library of books, right? We don't need to import or look at all the different books in the library, right? We only need certain ones. And this Unity engine one is what allows us to use things like void start, because typical C# would not have these things, but Unity uses them because we're making games that have frames and things like that. So you won't mess with the public class. Just think of that as this is the name of the script, and the name of the script must always match the class, right? If you change one or the other, your script will break and you'll have to adjust that. So as you can see, void start happens once, right before the first frame. It does not repeat, it only happens one time. Update, on the other hand, runs every frame. So if you're running at 60 frames per second, whatever code you have in there will happen 60 times every second. Okay? So the first thing that I'd like to have you do is inside of void start, and you'll notice we're inside of the parentheses here, and we're indented 1. It should indent it for you. But type in debug, capital debug, dot, capital log, and then open a parenthesis. You'll notice it automatically closed the parentheses. And add a quotation mark. It puts the closing quotation mark in there for you. And we're just going to type in hello world, the classic first thing you can do in programming. And at the end of that line, you'll see this little red squiggle mark. It's upset with us. If you hover over it, it says, yeah, I was expecting a semicolon. Now, if you look on the wall over there underneath my mugshot by the 3D printer, what do you see? You forgot a semicolon. Because it's very common in C# that people write a statement and they forget the semicolon. The semicolon is like the period at the end of a sentence, okay? You need it. So, how many times will this statement run? Just once. So, Control S. By the way, if you don't Control S, I'll know when I'm helping people because it'll have this little asterisk right there. So when you Control S, that goes away. Now go back to Unity. This script will only run if it is attached to something in the hierarchy. The script by itself will not run unless we do that. So I'm going to drop it onto my UFO just to have somewhere for it to live. And I'm going to hide that for now. So if you click on the UFO, you should now see this. Do you see that? Your script is attached to the UFO. Now, we need our console, which is where we're going to see messages like debug messages, like when there's errors. So go to Window, General, Console. And this tab pops up. I'm going to dock it over here on the project window, I guess. So I just kind of dropped the panel right there. So that way I can see messages to myself when I hit play. So once you have the console up, hit play. Oops, I'm in full screen mode. I don't want maximize on play running, so if you have maximize on play, make sure you turn that off or else you can't see the console. And there it ran. In my console it says, hello world, and it says that came from the Unity engine debug log from the object. And it ran one time. Everybody have hello world? Seems to work. Let's stop that, go back to our script. What's going to happen, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to put it in the update. And this time, I'm going to say hello again, what do you predict will happen? Control S, return to Unity. Our script is still attached, so we don't need to reattach. And just hit play. And let's look at our console. Hello World fired once, and hello again is running a lot. Over and over and over again. If you don't have collapse on, this little button right here, you can turn that off, and it literally just starts stacking them like infinitely. So I usually turn on collapse because you can actually see what it's doing. So, as expected. So now we know Debug Log can print strings. Now I'm going to take the one out of the void update for right now. And in the part up here, let's do our first little if statement. I'm going to just knock this down temporarily. We'll come back to that. So an if statement is exactly what it sounds. If something is true, then do something. So if I type if with a set of parentheses, and then I'm going to open a curly brace and hit enter. This is the proper formatting. Okay, if parentheses, then do this. So literally I could say if 5 is greater than 1, then I'm going to drag my debug log in there and make sure it's indented. Let's save it, come back here, play it. It said hello world one time. So the if statement actually ran. Returning back here, and so we know 5 is greater than 1. It's always going to be greater than 1. Now watch this. Inside of the class, I'm on line 6. My cursor is blinking inside of the public class, curly brace. Hit enter. Actually, I can hit enter twice so I have a gap right here because it's easier to read. Right here is where I could declare some variables that we're going to use elsewhere. Okay? So variables are basically containers that hold information, right? So let's say we want something called score. Well, we can't just say score equals 7. We have to tell it a couple other things. Number one, is it public or private? Public means you'll see it in Unity as, let's just try public and I'll explain what it is in a little bit. So public. Now if I wanted the number 7, what type of number is that? It is an integer. So I want a public int for integer, and I'm going to name it score. Now I could put a semicolon and then do some sort of assigning a value to it later, but I'm going to assign it a value now, and I'm going to say score equals 7. So I have a new variable. It is public, the type is int, and it's called score. So score equals 7. Now in my if statement, I can say if score is greater than 1, then do this. We simply Googled Unity key press. The first result, input.getKeyDown. This is one way to check if they actually pressed a button. So let's go in here, and I'm going to take out that. Don't need that anymore. In our update, we're going to do an if. If input dot, and there's a function inside of input called get key down, and as it's auto completing, you can just hit your up and down arrow keys and hit tab once you find the one you like. And then in parentheses, there's a lot of things you could do. You could put the name of the key in quotation marks. Which I'm not sure D is. Oh, whoops, I don't want to end my statement there. Open and close curly braces. And now we might debug log D was pressed. It's checking every frame. If we press D, it's going to log the message D was pressed. So I Control S, go to Unity, hit play. Uh-oh, input name D is unknown. Get key down. Uh-oh. Let's try the get or the keycode.d. Keycode.d. Let's try that. Save it. Test it. Make sure you click into your game window, otherwise you won't be able to press the letter D. And every time I press it, it goes up. Again, you have to click into your game window to activate the game. And then it should be telling every time you press a key, it responds by logging the message. To move it, we did a quick Google search of Unity transform.translate. And what that means is to move something, basically. And so we want to move in this direction times time.delta time, which normalizes it to 1.1 per second. So transform.translate, which is capitalized, vector to dot. And we can go up, down, left, right. We want to go to the right. And we want to control this, so to the right would be like 1. So we're going to say times speed, close parentheses, semicolon. But speed does not exist. So let's make a new variable to hold that. Public int speed, and I'm going to set it equal to 10 to start out with. So when we press D, it's going to debug log, so we know it's running, and it should move to the right. The translate means basically move the transform in the direction. And I save it, I run it, I click in the game menu, and I hit D. Oh no. It's like jumping. Boom, 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 boom. Well, that's not good. What if we made speed 1 and play? It kind of moves 1 frame at a time. Let's try what we saw in the example where it times it by time.delta time. Let's see what effect that has. Control S. Why? Oh, there we go. Now let's try it. Moving quite slow. Let's try like 40s. Oh man, now I gotta like press it every time and it's really jumpy. So we're not there yet.